Welcome to a self-published author's diary. I am Elodie Novodatsky. I write about first times, second chances, things that scare the crap out of me, and things that make me laugh out loud. I'll be speaking with you and sharing my adventures in self-publishing, the behind the scenes of writing, and the business side of it. And before we get started today, a small message from our sponsor, Anchor. Thanks for listening. Hello, it's Monday, May 9th. The sun is shining. Plato the dog decided not to let me sleep. Well, he did let me sleep a little bit, but not that much yesterday. And so now he's snoring happily on the couch. And I'm not. Last week I didn't do any daily updates on TikTok. I did do some videos which have had more than 1,000 views on both my pen name account and my Elodie Novodatsky account, but I didn't do them every single day. And there were flip pages with a hook and some words. I did notice The Leftover Bride ranking going back down as a result. So that might be another correlation showing that if I do TikTok videos, my ranking improves, meaning there are more people borrowing it in Kindle Unlimited. But again, some of those borrows have not yet resulted in reads, so hard to tell how efficient it is. But I did get one pre-order of Sweets for Love after one of the videos that was about Sweets for Love went viral for me, which again is a bit over 1,000 views. So whoop whoop. What I did do last week is I spent much more time writing. I wrote 3 episodes for my Kindle Vela stories and published them. I also wrote one today and published it. And I got back into Sweets for Love and it has been fun. I really, really love this story. Part of my process right now is to go back to books that I have found have details and action verbs that I don't myself use a lot. And I write them into a Google document. And I then try to integrate those action words into my writing by making them more visual. I've also been searching for idioms and trying to see how I can make them more voicey. So as if my character would be saying them, would be making them their own. So that the pages drip with that voice without overloading it. So if I find one expression, like, throw caution to the wind, well, then it comes, throw responsibilities to the wind for Aisling. Something like that. Something that I can put into my writing, which makes it, I think, more vivid and just better. So basically, I'm going back to my Margie Lawson's classes that I have bought as lecture packets years ago. I've been using them ever since, on and off. And right now, what I'm doing is basically going through my pages with those lectures in my mind, and I'm going to go back and actually go through them again. So one of the lecture that I got was deep editing, which is all about power lines and rhetorical devices, among other very important things like looking at excerpts with a certain lens and so much more. I also go back to another packet that I had purchased again years ago, which is Visceral Rules Beyond Hammering Hearts. And that one, so that's taken from the Margie Lawson's website. It's about adding emotions to scenes, and it looks at how to crescendo emotions, stimulus response patterns, overriding and underwriting, cliche twists and cliche play, and how to hook readers viscerally. And I have to say, one thing that's helping me get my writing to that stronger level and kind of made me go back into trying to apply what I had learned from those lecture packets and then go back and, see what else I can learn from them is writing those episodes for Vela and revising them and editing them in addition to writing my novel. It's really helping me playing around with words, and I think it's also helping me pace my stories better. And it's helping me becoming a better writer. That's what I'm saying today. Maybe tomorrow I'll be going through one of those I can't write mood. But full disclosure, actually, this morning when I started writing the episode for one of my Vela stories, I had that, oh my God, I cannot write feeling. I thought the writing was going to be sluggish and probably would require a lot more work. Even if I had the structure and even if the episode was 1,200 words, for serialized fiction, you really can have shorter episodes. You can also have much longer episodes. But again, for me, what I found works is 1,200 words. It is much shorter than my regular chapters when it comes to novels. Those ones, they vacillate between 1,500 and 2,800 mostly. And then I opened my computer and I opened the document and I started writing. I reread some of the episodes that I had written and had published last week, because this one is the story I only really update once a week right now. And I started writing and it was actually pretty good. And it got even better as I revised it. It was fun, it was steamy, and it definitely had a very strong voice. So yeah, and it kind of reminded me of a big assignment class I've taken during a mini Incon conference. The fact that I had just had to open the document, but how, before opening the document, I did a few things. I went through my emails. We currently have something with some of my friends, if they're listening to this right now, where I am trying to reduce the amount of emails I have in my inboxes. So I did do that before starting to work. Could I have waited until after I had written the episode? Yes, but I also wanted to do something productive while I was trying not to write for like 10-15 minutes before starting to work. When Bekasam, during that class was talking about sometimes you just have to open the document. Sometimes you just have to do it. Like just for 5 minutes, you have the document and you start writing. And sometimes it's just what you need to start writing. Over times, it's much more complicated than that. Sometimes it's even part of your process. But right now for me, as I was thinking that I was not going to be able to write and that it was just not going to be good, well, I started writing and it was actually great. Well, I think it was great. We'll see if I get a lot of thumbs up and if people follow the story, if it resonates with the readers. But I think it was a pretty good episode. So talking about process and goals and learning and everything. Well, on TikTok last week, I asked writers and self-published authors to share with me what advice they would give someone who just started. And I had a lot of wonderful answers. I'll share a couple with you today. I asked them if it was okay for me to share, and they said yes. What's important to remember is that this is also something personal that can apply to you or it may not. But I think by sharing them, it can motivate you and maybe make you feel less alone, or also make you go, oh, I didn't think about that, or I needed that reminder, or maybe it's going to be one of those things that shows you, oh no, that doesn't work for me, but that does, but that other thing does. And maybe that's another reminder of what works for you. I find most of what the authors and writers have written on that post, on that TikTok post, very encouraging. So I'll start with a few. Lisa Malloy, who writes steamy contemporary romance, said, just keep writing. Ideally repeated over and over like the just keep swimming mantra from Finding Nemo. And read, and she had read in all caps, as many books as you can. And this is something I have noticed is helping me a lot. And for the keep writing part of it, I think it really does depend where you are both in your writing career and in your writing journey. I don't like the word journey. I couldn't come up with another word right now, but you know what I mean. And yes, on reading as many books as you can. On that one, I think that's an advice that shouldn't be discarded ever. And by reading, it doesn't have to be reading. It can be listening to an audiobook. It doesn't mean that you have to read books in your genre all the time either. I say that because when I want to read for pleasure, when I'm drafting, I need to step out of the rom-coms and contemporary romance world, because it makes it harder to not overanalyze the books that I'm reading, and it makes it very hard to not compare with like what I'm writing. But I do read those as well. Even when I'm drafting, I do, as I said, I reread certain things and I go and check what has worked, what hasn't worked, and I do analyze them. But when I write, then I usually read, for example, thrillers or romantic suspense or paranormal or historic fiction, or I just read other books or listen to other audiobooks because I can't get lost in the story as well as I usually can when it comes to contemporary romance and rom-coms when I'm drafting. I just can't get lost in a rom-com when I'm drafting. It's just not happening. So at the Sphere Scribe mention, write the first draft selfishly with only you in mind, then edit it with other readers in mind. All the writing advice you can look up might have your head turning, trying to write the right way, and then you never get the story done because it doesn't seem like one people will like it. Which I think parallels what another author at Mood Writer Jin mentioned, which was write with your heart, finish it, and then edit with your mind. So those also resonated with me because sometimes it does feel that way, that you're not moving forward with the story because you hear different advice about what to write, how to write, and one can get stuck into the feedback loop. But in that case, it's actually feedback without really being feedback because no one is reading the story at this stage. I mean, I do have a tendency to always share snippets of my story with my newsletter subscribers because I do enjoy sharing the drafting stage, even if sometimes I'm totally petrified. But I only do that when I already have the characters down and when I'm at the stage of the writing, which is basically writing/revising. And while I know it's important to expand one writing's craft, all the different advice about what to do can get overwhelming. Prologue or no prologue? Should you start with conversation or never start with conversation? Do not dare start with a dream sequence. Oh, but you could start with a dream sequence. Why are your descriptions so long? Oh, but don't forget to ground your story with description. I need to feel with the character. Too many emotions. It's really all a balancing act. Don't go too fast. Don't go too slow. You need a breakup scene in your romance. No, you don't. So it's just, right now today, I feel more comfortable in my writing and the way the story shapes all the stories that I'm currently writing and the way I can play around with the genre and how I'm writing it and some of the cliches and some of the tropes. Like I can mix them up. I can do certain things differently. When it comes to pacing, I have found that going with beats really helps. There are a few, like Gwen Hayes, for example. I think she has an Excel document with the number of words you should have before certain things happen. Then there are more like Save the Cat beats and Scrivener templates that you can load, and they might help you organize your story, plan it, plot it in a certain way so that the pacing goes at the way it's supposed to go. You have the Libby Hawker book, which is Take Off Your Pants, Outline Your Books for Faster, Better Writing. And that's another way to plot your books. And I also feel that expanding one craft is important, but I also know that there are authors who write very short first drafts, quick short first drafts to get the story written, and then they go back and they fill it with more of the voice and more of the style and more of those emotions and power words and. And when it comes to the story and not the style, I think here it really depends again on so many factors. Meaning if you want to write a commercial story, then you should look at what works and study those different aspects. Do you want to write to market? How fast do you need to write to market? Those are all very valid questions. And sometimes it might just be that you need to write the story first for yourself and then edit it thinking about everything else. That you need to write it first with your heart and then edit it with your mind. It all depends on what works for you. It's something that it is important to figure out. I think it helps to cancel out some of the noise otherwise about what you should and should not do when it comes to writing a novel, and what works and what doesn't work, and what you should be looking at and what plot you should be doing, and should you do a 3 acts, and should you do a breakup scene when it comes to romance, or should you just have a dark moment, or should you start with a dream sequence and maybe change it up a little bit the way it's written, or maybe all those different questions that you have when you're a writer. And I think it's also sometimes easier to figure that out when you read in your genre, and then again, you try to cancel out the other noise from people or online, or just saying like, oh, you can't do that, or you have to do that, or you need to do that, or no, you cannot have a prologue, or no, you cannot have an epilogue, or no. And then it's just, maybe it is about writing the story first and then trying to figure out. But for me now, the process is maybe a bit different, because I have those books and those packets and everything else that I think helps me in terms of not seeing what I can and cannot do into the book right now. And again, this is what I'm saying today. It might change tomorrow. I can quote Leslie Penelope again, who a few episodes ago, I think dozens episodes ago now actually, talked about systems and figuring out what systems work for you. Being in drafting, being in finding the time to draft, being in finding that balance that makes it so that the draft is written. And that goes with what another author has said. Molly Cox Bryan on the same TikTok post said, there's no one way in any of the process. Give yourself space and time to figure out what works for you. And I'll stop this episode with those words. I'll go back to other advice authors have shared on that particular video. I'm going to ask also what they think about what has worked for them in terms of marketing. And here again, I think there will be so many different answers. So as always, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, share with your friends, or even become a monthly supporter. The link is in this episode's description. To all writers out there, happy writing. And to everyone, happy reading.